Hey man, what's up? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. What's up, man?
Just give me, hey, what's up, man? How's it going?
I'm doing all
Just give
right.
me a few seconds to connect my
Yeah,
headphones.
go ahead.
All right. So can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, man. What's up? How's it going?
I'm doing all right. You want to lead off or go first?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Let me go off. Okay. So hi everyone. My name is not really Jack Nicholson, but just call me Jack. I argue with people. I argue with race replays mainly on Twitter. I used to argue on 4chan, but I got banned. I used to argue on Discord, but I got banned. And today we're just going to be discussing. I was arguing with Dick on Twitter about white activism, and we had some disagreements about that and race realism. So that's what we're just going to be discussing today. Yeah, and Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, we essentially started arguing on Twitter, and then you actually took my challenge to come on my show and debate, which I always appreciate. Not a lot of people do that. So,
Yeah,
do you want me to lead it off, or just give you my kind of basis for why I think that?
and I think you should start with why you believe in racial IQ differences and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably what we'll mainly focus on. So are you of the belief that uh, genetics are or IQ is not genetic at all, or do you have a range that you think it's genetic or anything like that?
Uh, I think it's mainly environmental. I can give a range
So
based on the research.
so you think it's like over 50% environmental.
And I think it's like over 80% environmental.
Okay, you think it's mainly 80% environmental. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, do you have any
80 to 100.
82 8, so you think it's almost totally environmental then?
Yeah,
Okay.
almost totally. Yeah.
So so then you kind of believe in the blank slate theory that everyone is born with the exact same capabilities and abilities genetically, and it's essentially your environment that makes the difference.
Absolutely not. That's a pseudoscientific theory. It's quite evident that there are people with different IQ scores. Even within my family, there's a wide range of intelligence. So that I can't believe in blank slate theory. That's pseudoscience.
But okay, but largely you think that when you're born, right, like everyone's essentially even.
No. So people are more intelligent than others.
So okay, so then I guess you're kind of contradicting yourself. You're saying you think it's 80 to 100% environmental, but then you're saying no, some people are born inherently with a higher IQ.
No. I think I didn't phrase it properly. What I mean is that the IQ gap is 80 to 100%. Sorry, yeah, 80 to 100% environmental. Within groups, there's a wide variety of intelligence scores. So I'm talking about the difference in between the
Okay,
groups.
gotcha. So,
Obvious, yeah.
so okay, but in terms of like let's just say within a population group, right? How much do you think IQ is genetic?
I
It's like
don't know.
among just blacks or among just whites or even just within a family or like a certain family tree. Like how much do you think is passed down from generation to
By
generation?
genes. According to some twin studies, the latest twin studies show about 54% heritability. But twin studies have their own issues, but I'll say, in my own opinion, maybe like 40% genetic, because environment does play a big role as well.
Okay.
But
So
but within a family, the heritability of IQ is going to be very close to 100% because the environment is quite similar. If I'm talking about within a country or something like that, it'll be like 40% genetic,
all right,
in
so
my
then
opinion.
so okay, so within a small frame of a family or maybe like a community, you think it a lot of its genetics are over 50%. But when it comes
Yeah,
to a racial group, you think that it's mainly environmental.
Yeah, and it will depend on how much environment vary within the group. For example, a country like my country, Nigeria, Nigeria is rather an unequal society. Even where I am seated right now, I can see a beggar from here. But so the differences in IQ between me and a beggar, for example, would not be me. I won't say it's mainly due to genetics. When a country like let's say Sweden or Norway, where the environment is far more equal, then the differences in IQ between people most likely be due to genes.
Right. I guess from my point of view, I have a hard time rounding that circle because largely if you just expand outward on the family and you expand outward into like what a community is and you expand outward even more to a certain haplogroup, right, of people who are largely building the same culture, are largely building the same country, etc. I mean, wouldn't that lend credence to, genetics still being a large portion of why those people are as successful or not as they are in their certain area or environment?
No, because it would be very fallacious to map on within group heritability onto between group heritability, and that's a mistake that people make all the time. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have four kids being raised in like a pocket or something, identical environments, like you sadistically control for the environments. Obviously, the difference between their now, and if they, let's say, let me start again. Let's say you have four kids and you raise them in isolated environments, like just like rooms, and they're not allowed to live or interact with anybody else. And you let them take an IQ test by the time they're like 18. Their IQ scores are going to be relatively lower than the average population. And the IQ scores are also going to differ between themselves. But because their environment has been very similar, most of the difference in the IQ is going to be due to genes. But you can't then see, because most of the IQ difference between their IQs in that similar environment has been due to genes, that the heritability between them and the rest of society is due to genes. You can't map on that heritability then to the wider society. And it's the same thing you can't do for between countries. You have a real world example like Somalis. Somalia is a very poor country. The BMI of Somalia on average is about 18 to 21. In the United States, is about 26. And the overweight population of the United States, I think it's about 48% for adults. But the heritability of BMI is about 70%. However, Somalis in America have a higher rate of obesity than the average American citizen. So even though BMI is very heritable, it's not as if genes are the main difference in why Somalis are less have lower BMI than Americans. That's mainly due to environment. So it would be fallacious to say, well, genes contribute to the difference in weight between Somalis and Americans, because Somalis in America have a higher BMI on average than Americans, like native born Americans.
Right. So how would you explain then the fact that white Europeans and white Americans essentially have the same average IQ?
I mean, they have similar. I mean, they have a similarly developed. They're first world countries.
I know,
They're
but we're
first world
talking
nations.
about two populations separated by an ocean.
Yeah, but I mean, they're first world nations.
Right, but
First
why?
world nations.
Because they made first world nations.
What do you mean they made?
Like
Yeah,
why?
yeah, yeah.
Why do
They
East
made first world
Asians?
nations.
Why do East Asians over in East Asia and East Asians over here in America still have largely the same IQ?
Uh, First of all, like some of the studies on East Asian IQs in East Asia have been subject to some scrutiny, especially in like China or North Korea. Like for China, for example, some of those studies are from private schools or whatever. But yeah, I would say like South Korea's IQ studies are these studies are they are reliable. I'd say very simple. South Koreans in Korea and America have similar cultures. They work hard, they train their kids well, so they'll have similar IQs, mainly cultural similarities.
So okay, so if culture is lending to such a high IQ for Koreans, let's say South Koreans in South Korea and in America, then why wouldn't a group like the black community just copy their culture and boost their IQ up by 30 points?
The thing is, I mean, you can't just, it's not easy like that to just copy a culture. I mean, if you have someone that's grown up in a ghetto, all they see around there is criminals and all those kind of things.
Right. You saw the papers that I've sent you were like they control for poverty, right?
But yeah, like when they control for socioeconomic status, the gap still remains. And it's not like that in other countries. In England, when they control for socioeconomic status, the gap reduces. In America, it's not that way. Even if you control for SES, the gap between black Americans and white Americans still remains. And there are reasons for this. Study after study have shown that black Americans, even at higher income levels, do substantially less homework. Is there a way I can link it? Yeah, they do substantially less homework than other groups, study less than other groups, even when they move up in SES. So my only explanation for why they would score lower in SAT or something like that would be simply they don't work as hard as other groups. I mean, it's garbage in, garbage out. There's a proverb in my country: you can't expect a chicken to give birth to a goat. You can't reap where you didn't sow. So this is not surprising at all.
I mean, I guess I feel like that's kind of just taking an easy out. Like, if your argument is culture, right? I mean, if you're going to be of higher socioeconomic status and you're going to live in a nicer community, you're going to go to a better school, and yet you're still lagging behind white kids. I mean, to just say, oh, well, they just don't study as much. I mean, at what point do you say it's on them, and like, you know, why are we supposed to be held responsible for that?
No, I'm not exonerating them. Like it's their decision. Like it's a cultural thing that they don't place a lot of emphasis on education. It's not. I didn't blame anyone. I'm just trying to say that is the reason that you guys ascribe it to genetics. That's what I'm trying to say.
So okay, but
I think that.
Go ahead.
No, continue.
I was gonna say even like even just taking away black and white kids. I mean, there's like you've seen the bell curve. There's like a perfect deviation in level to every race, essentially on average, right? Like this can't just be by environmental coincidence. And then further, the second part I was gonna say to the environment argument is this: if you think environment plays such a big role in someone's life or in a community's life, you understand that environment's been shaping our evolution and our genetics for millions of years, right? So even if I were to grant you the environment argument, the environment's been shaping our genetics for, a millennia now, essentially. And to think that in one generation or in one lifetime, environment's going to just wipe all that away and have a bigger influence than the environment that has shaped our genetics for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. I think that's a little naive, or maybe you're not thinking it like that, but that seems like that would be a little hard to do if you really think environment plays such a big factor.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, what I'd like to say is that the gap between blacks and whites is about, according to the bell curve, is about one standard deviation. According to the APA, it's about 0.66 standard deviations now. So, and between East Asians and whites, it's about 0.33 standard deviations. Asians score about 0.33 standard deviations higher than white. So it's not as if it's an exact standard deviation for most groups. It's not even like that at all.
No. I don't mean it's an exact deviation. I just mean that they continue to fall in these averages where it's always Asian, white, Hispanic, black. At least over here in America, right? I'm more familiar with America. And to think that this is just random, or that environment is playing such a role to just perfectly keep them at these different intervals, right? Not necessarily one standard deviation, but just these different intervals where they almost always line up like that for like we've seen over 50 to 100 years now. I guess I think it's a little, I think you're kind of just hand waving that away a little bit, in the fact that would be really hard to environmentally do over generations.
No, what I'm trying to say is that these IQ tests, these IQ scores, they follow perfectly with the environmental hypothesis. Black, Hispanic, white, Asian follows exactly the same pattern of income levels and socioeconomic levels in America. I think it's there that way: black, white, black, Hispanic, white, Asian. So it's not contradictory at all. On your point about environment shaping evolution, there's just no evidence to suggest that different groups are selected differently for intelligence. There's even a paper here that I would like to share showing that with geneticists showing that there is no evidence for divergent selection of intelligence. Even there's even another paper showing that that's just within the last 2,000 years, but so it might not be as reliable. But showing that there has been no evidence of positive selection for cognitive ability, but that's just in Europeans. But there's just no evidence for it. There's no explanation for why different groups would evolve to get different IQs. And wait, how can I share the study? Because
I'll
that
just
should
put it
put
in the
the
chat. I'll pop it up.
yeah. Yeah,
But
okay.
like,
Let me
do
get
you
it.
understand? Like, if it's just following your own logic. Like, if you think environment, right, is such a big factor in someone's lifetime, then surely,
Yeah.
right? Surely, if you think that, I mean, I don't really need studies or anything, but surely, if you think that, then the environment's been playing on our genetics for hundreds of thousands of years. That's what I'm kind of saying. Like, you're kind of talking out of two sides of your mouth, where it's like environment is why things are different now, but also environment has nothing to do with why we've been different in the past or what led up to this.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That what environment in the past leads to different groups having different intelligence. There is none.
So then, so then environment over thousands upon thousands of years could affect your IQ, would it not?
Yeah, but what's in like I can explain why blacks have darker skin. It's an adaptation to the temperature here. I can explain why whites have lighter skin or even pointier noses, stuff like that. These are adaptations. What is the adaptation for intelligence in these different environments? Just saying that groups live in different areas, so they must be different in intelligence is fallacious. It's like saying, oh, humans live on different continents. So why do all of us have two arms? Why don't have some have three? Like
Well,
that's
there's a
that's
few theories. Have you heard of the cold winter theory?
unfortunately.
I guess you think it's. I mean, I'm not saying it's true, but I'm just asking. Like, you don't think there's anything to it?
I think there's absolutely nothing to it. I think it's an ad hoc theory. So basically, what these guys have seen is that people in colder countries have higher IQs, and then they now walk backwards and say that there's a causation to this, not knowing that the richest areas in the world, Europe, for example, many of these countries like Canada and America, which are colder, were not originally settled by Europeans. That's another factor that many of these have ignored,
Well, no,
and that
we're
these
going
regions
like we're
haven't
going
always
like
been.
way back in
Yeah.
Europe. Is the cold winter theory?
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm just trying to say that the cold weather theory originates from a correlation between national IQ and average temperature. But even the theory itself doesn't make sense that European hunter-gatherers had to plan more for winters and thus they became more intelligent. The simple question is, what exactly are they planning ahead for? Like, what are
Survival,
they storing in the winter?
survival.
What? How?
Like food, you can't go pick berries in the winter. You can't just go out and find a herd of animals in the winter. You can't move around as good in the winter. You have to prepare. You have to have enough firewood for the winter. You have to like think 3, 4, 5. Well, even in Europe, maybe even longer, 6 months ahead of time. You have to get It's like a bear hibernating almost. Like you have to prepare for a long time in which you're not going to be able to do things as well, and things will not be as abundantly available. That could or form different lines of thinking, or however that works in your brain. I don't know the exact terminology for it, but that could change the way you think and make you think further ahead.
Yeah, what I'm just trying to say is that uh, there are still animals in the winter that would still need to be hunted, unless you're saying they are storing meat during the winter, which I highly doubt, but that they are picking berries and storing them for the winter, which is the food would spoil. Like that's and like the only thing that you need to prepare for during the winter is shelter, and there are many other environments which are also very difficult that this theory ignores, such as deserts. I think deserts are far more difficult to live in than cold areas, and the theory also ignores that
Well,
people like
no one even
Siberians.
really lives like the Sahara Desert. Like no one really lives for long in the Sahara Desert.
No, I would disagree. My ancestors evolved there in the Sahara. We moved southward eventually, but that's where we evolved in the Sahara Desert.
Right, because you couldn't. Yeah,
And
because you
yeah,
can't even live there really.
yeah, there are people that have lived in deserts. Arabs, many groups have lived in deserts. And the theory also ignores people like Inuit, Siberians, Native Canadians who lived in these cold environments. And somehow the positive effects of the cold winter never acted on them. Only Europeans and Asians for some reason. I think the theory is just ad hoc in general.
So, what do you think about like Neanderthal DNA?
Neanderthals didn't have higher IQs than humans.
Do
Like
what?
the Neanderthals didn't have higher intelligence than humans.
No, but the way it's formed, like it's formed brains and skulls and stuff like that, prefrontal cortex, etc.
That they had a greater prefrontal cortex than humans. Like a bigger
Neanderthals. It's said or argued that they have those who have Neanderthal DNA tend to have bigger brain volume, like the overall.
Yeah, but brain volume doesn't determine intelligence.
There's a
If it
direct
did,
correlation between brain volume and IQ.
yeah, but this is the mistake I'm talking about again. There's a correlation between brain volume and IQ. I think within groups, mapping this onto groups will make you have fallacious arguments. For example, the correlation is about 0.4 or 0.3. Yet women have much smaller brains than men, yet the same IQs. Let me give you
No,
another
no.
example.
No. They don't have the same like they have the same average IQ, but men tend
Yeah,
to
the same, but
fall.
yeah,
Men tend to
we
fall
find
on.
different bell curve shape.
They tend to
They have a
fall on
different
the
bell curve shape.
front or the back end of the IQ scale, whereas women hover towards the middle. So they have the same average, but they don't have the same layout.
Yeah, yeah. Even different groups have different averages. Asians have less people towards the edges than whites. Whites have more extreme people than Asians. They have more geniuses, I would say, than
Right. That's how
Asians and
men.
more.
That's how men and women differ as well.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, they have the same average. I'm just trying to make this point. And also, let me give you another example. There's a correlation between testicular volume and sperm count. And but Asians have the smaller testicles than whites, but Asians have higher sperm count on average than whites. So see what happens here. That even though the volume of the correlation between testicular volume and the sperm count is high, you have a group with lower testicular volume having higher sperm count than white. So mapping all of these onto different groups is just troublesome. I mean, it's just going to give you like
Well,
fallacious arguments. That's what I'm trying to
well,
say.
I didn't look up sperm counts. I was only mainly looking up IQ, but guess I can look that up
No, no,
later.
no, I'm just giving you an example
Right.
where,
Right.
like, yeah,
But the rule
that's
the
what I'm
rule
trying
would
to say.
still apply though, right? That even that example that higher testicular volume equals a higher sperm count, right? I mean, is that still the rule?
Yeah, you can say that within groups, but you can't just map it on different groups. Asians have smaller testicles than whites on average, yet they have a higher sperm count. You can't
Right.
just map
But
all these
is the
correlations.
white Asian relationship an exception to the rule?
What do you mean? No, and it's also the same thing with blacks. Asians have smaller testicles than blacks, and they have higher sperm counts.
So then, I guess I don't know. I'd have to look it up. So then, what do you think about the fact you can scan someone's brain, you can scan their skull, and you can literally tell what ethnicity they are?
Uh,
That's
I
not ad
mean,
hoc, right? I mean, that's just a perfect
I
one
mean,
for
it's not.
one.
It's. I mean, the thing is, to me, like racial taxonomy doesn't really matter. Like whether race is a social construct or not, that's not really stuff I argue. Like if race were just arguing about whether race was a social construct, I mean I'd leave them. The main argument is the intelligence and all those stuff like crime. Like some people say race is a social construct, and but clearly there are differences between races. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, but again, when we're trying to nail down exactly what the difference is, or if there is a racial difference in IQ, I guess what I'm trying to do is there are all these other factors in which you could say, well, whites have this brain shape and blacks have this brain shape, right? Like that's not environmental. That's directly biological and genetics. And to say that that wouldn't have some kind of effect on possibly your IQ or your brain function or something like that. I just think like I don't understand how you can get away from that one.
Yeah, but like I've said, men and women have different brain shapes and brain volumes, yet they have the same average IQs. The average is what I'm looking for. They have the same average IQs. There's just like no evidence of this thing. And when you're talking of a brain scan being able to identify your ethnicity, doesn't necessarily mean that black and whites are these like solid racial groups. What the brain scan can do is identify where your ancestors are from. For example, I am Nigerian. If the brain scan identifies I'm Nigerian, it will know that I am black. If the brain
Right.
scan identifies that you are Swedish, for example, it will know that you are white. It doesn't mean that these are solid racial categories. You can split them as many times as you want. They just, yeah, exactly. That's just what the brain scan is doing. It's not really saying, oh, that this person is black. It's just showing where they are from. And from where they are from, you can know whether they're black, white, Asian. Yeah.
Right. But what I'm saying is like there are fundamental differences in brain shapes, like in brain volumes, brain formations, etc. You don't think that matters at all?
It matters. It could probably matter in the way, I don't know, it could probably how people think about things. But it just doesn't
Say
show
that one
that
more
it's,
time. Sorry, you dropped out. Say it one more time.
yeah, I'm saying that it probably matters in the way people think about things. Like I would have to see the specific parts of the brain where they differ, but it doesn't mean that they differ. It means they differ in IQ. I'd have to see where they differ because different parts of the brain have different functions. So I'd have to see where it differs, but it doesn't mean anything about IQ.
Okay, but I guess I just want to get the fact down, or I'm trying to nail down the fact that there are different brain volumes and brain sizes and shapes between the races.
Yeah, they are. They
Okay,
are.
all right.
But it's yeah. But
Just
all I would just like to say is that statistically, like it's very rare that different groups have the same average or something. So it's expected if I go out and to different streets and take the average height of everyone there, like compare two streets, different streets, and take the house of everybody living and the average height of everyone living there will be a difference. So this is not like it's not something unexpected statistically.
um, what are your thoughts on the Minnesota twin study then?
The Minnesota Twin study, I mean, it's one of the most famous pieces of hereditarian evidence. However, I mean, it's not the evidence that hereditarians think it is. So,
You dropped out again. If you can hear me, you dropped out.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I'm saying that like the Minnesota transracial adoption study is one of the most famous pieces of hereditarian evidence, and but it's not like when you look at the study, it's not really in support of the hereditarian hypothesis. So I would just like you to preface it for the people listening, so I can explain the issues with it.
Yeah, so the Minnesota twin adoption study was 9 sets of twins, I think, something like that. It was a low number of twins, but essentially they were identical twins, so same
It
genetics.
wasn't that low.
It was more. I can't remember exactly how many it was. Um,
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem. Just continue.
Here, maybe I have it right here. Hold on. Anyways, yeah. I can't find the exact number of twins here. I didn't have that ready. But essentially what they did was they took identical twins, they separated them after they had only lived together for like 3 to 6 months or something of that nature when they were really young, and then they essentially tested their IQ or things of that nature whenever they got into when they were older. I think so over 100 sets of reared apart twins and triplets have participated in the research. Okay, it's more. I thought it's more than what I thought it was.
Yeah, it's quite.
Yeah. Average twins that participated in the study were 41 years old, which is important because most twin research prior to this focus on adolescence, the twins spent an average of 5 months together before being separated and reunited, on average, around 30 years of age. Essentially what they're trying to do, right, is control for environment. So if you have identical sets of genetics, twins essentially...
Are you sure that this is the Minnesota transracial adoption study? Because this seems like a twins read apart.
Minnesota twins study. Oh, if twins reared apart. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about transracial adoption.
The transracial
So
adoption, more specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's...
Largely though, it's what I was just saying. Largely, it's kind of along the same lines.
Yeah. So I mean, the study basically takes different groups of twins of different race. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So it takes different groups of twins.
Oh, I have it here. If you want me to read it real
races.
quick, I got it here.
Yeah.
Okay, the Minnesota Transracial Adoption Study examined the IQ test scores of 130 black or interracial children adopted by advantaged white families. The aim of the study was to determine the contribution of environmental and genetic factors to the poor performance of black children on IQ tests as compared to white children. The initial study was published in 1976. A follow-up study was published in 1992. Another related study investigating social adjustment in a subsample of the adopted black children was published in 96. On measures of cognitive ability and school performance, black children in the U.S. have performed worse than white children, blah, blah, blah. And I guess I have the results here. Pulled up on my page. But go ahead, say what people who are listening largely know this study.
Exactly. Okay, so basically this study it's one of the most famous hereditarian studies because it basically proves the hereditarian hypothesis. So what happens is they adopt black kids, mixed kids and white kids, and then they send them to different environments. These three groups, and what happens is the white kids score higher. They score the highest, then the mixed kids, then the black kids, and then when they do the follow-up study, the gap has even seemingly widened. So even supports the hypothesis that genes play a bigger role as you get older. However, what many people don't know about this study is that the gap doesn't really widen. When you control for attrition, and when there's attrition, it means that during the follow-up study, there are some people who might not be able to track down their IQs in adulthood, and the white kids who were not being able to track down, when they checked their scores in the previous study, they had substantially low IQs. So the white kids who were measured had elevatedly got away from a more elite sample because the low IQ ones had been lost to attrition. So when you control for attrition, the gap doesn't really close at all. And the white kids score about 101.8, the mixed kids score about 98.3, and the black kids score about 90. So the gap between the mixed and white kids is like 3 points. It's almost non-existent. It can be like attributed to statistical noise. The biggest gap is between the white and black kids, almost 12 points. So the gap only closes by about 3 points. However, what is ignored in this study is the fact that the black kids were not really subjected to the same equal standings before being adopted. For example, they were adopted far later than the rest of the kids by 2.1 standard deviations. They spent 1.1 standard deviations less time in the adoptive home, 0.4 standard deviations lower adoptive placement. Sorry, 0.8 standard deviations lower adoptive placements, and even the adoptive parents had less education and lower IQ by 0.2 to 0.3 standard deviations. And additionally, the black-white adoptees, the mixed-race adoptees had white mothers, while the black-black adoptees all had black mothers. And around that time, they still do, but around that time, the gap between black and white prenatal care was massive. So this study doesn't really prove what hereditary I think it is. Other
And
studies show. Yeah, continue.
so yeah, like I'm aware of some of that stuff you said about the study. Uh, but largely we're looking at what, like a five, maybe 6, 7 IQ point difference on average
Between who?
between like when they were adopted at 7, and then
And
compared
17.
to their age 17 IQ.
Yeah. Let me see.
I can send it to
How
you.
do I talk to that? Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's about 10. It's about, well, for the blacks it's about 7. For the whites and mixed it's about 10. Yeah.
So then, like, I guess I'm wondering, do you agree with the fact that the environment? I mean, with everything you just said, I acknowledge everything you just said, but with them growing up in different environments and still kind of largely coming out to somewhat of a same range of IQ. Uh, I
Uh,
mean,
not really. Not really, because the mixed kids basically closed the gap. The only difference was with the black kids who were not subjected to equal, were not subjected to the same post or prenatal environment as the other kids, and no one even knows the average IQs of the parents of the black kids, which was almost definitely substantially lower. So, and it's even coming from around the time in the 70s where you'd be hard pressed to find blacks with decent environments. So, the what is important really is the gap between the mixed and the black kids, the mixed and the white kids, sorry, which saw almost a total.
say that last part. You said the mixed and the white kids, and then you cut out. Oh no, I lost you. I can't hear you if you can hear me. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You cut out right as you
Yeah, I'm
were
just trying to
talking.
say that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, I'm saying that like the difference between the mixed and white kids who had more similar environments, unlike the black kids who were, yeah, subjected to all that stuff, was almost closed entirely, which is consistent with the hypothesis that majority of difference in environment in IQ scores is due to gene to environment. I'd even like to point out another study, the study by Moore in 1986, which measures the IQ of black kids raised by white parents, white middle class parents, black and mixed kids. And the black kids scored about 118 IQ points on average. Mixed kids scores about 116 IQ points on average. And another one of more studies even shows that they were able to, comparing them with the black kids who were raised solely by uh, black parents, they had about a standard deviation higher, which is basically the black white IQ gap. Another study by Tizard, like I'm not going to use the study because this, like, even though it supports my hypothesis, the kids were too young. IQ tests don't start being reliable for kids until they're like 6, and the kids that Tizard used were about 4 or 5. So I'll focus on the AFED study, another well-known study. So what AFED did was measure the IQs of
Send me these
mixed
studies, by
kids.
the way, when you get a chance. You don't have to do it right now.
No problem. Yeah, the AFED study focuses on mixed kids, the product of relationships between black GIs in the Second World War who were stationed in Germany and their white mothers, and it shows that the mixed black kids had the same average IQs as the what they call it, as the white, as
How,
the purely white kids from American GIs.
how
Now,
big
what some
how
people
big
would
was
say
that
in this,
study though? How many kids were in that study? Just curious, because that seems like
let me see,
there'd be a finite amount of
let me check.
people.
It's about the same as the Minnesota transracial adoption study. Let me check.
Yeah, because actually my biggest problem with the transracial adoption study is that it says the adopting parents of 12. The
12
children,
what?
how many?
The adoption, what did you say?
Saying the children were first tested in 1975 at age 7. In 1985, only 196 of the original 265 children were retested at age 17. So
Yeah, I
like,
know. I'm saying that when you control for that, like the increase in the gap goes away. That's attrition. Unfortunately, you can't track down everybody in the original study. But when you do that, it accounts for the gap widening between the black and white participants of the study.
why
Yeah.
would
So
why would
it
that
doesn't
why would that account for it widening?
because when they looked at the kids who were lost to attrition, the,
Wouldn't the
uh,
kids lost to attrition bring down the average black IQ?
Yeah, it did slightly. No, but for the white IQ, it raised it because the kids who were lost to attrition were disproportionately low IQ in the original studies. And when you control for that, the gap doesn't increase like hereditarians say it does. And it also, same case happened with the mixed kids. They also had a slightly disproportionate amount of low IQ people being lost to attrition. So when you correct for that, the gap between them and the whites is 3 points, but the gap between the whites and the blacks causes from 14 points to 11. So people claim that the gap widened, but it didn't, and it didn't when you control for that. So it
Why
doesn't make the study unreliable.
why do you think there's a difference in if the parents are both white or one white, one black, or Asian or indigenous, or two black biological parents?
Yeah, I would say mainly the culture. In my own opinion, the way they raise kids is different, especially in America. Like I've said, in America you have like I don't want to demonize anyone, but there's kind of like an anti-intellectual culture amongst African Americans compared to other groups, which is detrimental
I do
to
agree. I do agree
developmental
with that.
IQ.
Actually, I largely do. I almost 100% agree with that.
Yeah. So all those kind of things will negatively affect kids in their development. Yeah.
I guess my one of my problems with the culture argument is that people make culture, right? It's not like this thing that
Mhm.
just comes out of thin air. And so I guess at some point, right, you'd have to look at the culture that black people kind of largely take part in, or to some degree take part in the U.S. And I don't know if you would say this, but a lot of people would say, oh well, it's like the white man keeping them down and stuff like this, which obviously I
Uh,
don't believe in. But like
I don't.
how do you kind of argue that?
For the culture, in my own opinion, I mean, you have to first of all ask you like, why is their culture that way? That's the first question.
Well,
And
I
we'd have
think
to be
it's
honest
largely
about it.
genetics.
I mean, yeah, like I mean, that's a fair assessment. But in my own opinion, it would be dishonest to pretend like stuff like segregation or slavery didn't have a creation of what happens in these inner cities.
So that's
Like in
actually,
my own opinion, that's the majority of it.
yeah, I was kind of hoping this would get brought up a little bit because I have to go back and find some of the research. I wasn't prepared for this topic per se, but actually, back when there was segregation in the U.S., the pay gap was smaller. The nuclear family was stronger in the black community. They got in trouble with the law less. The achievement gap was much smaller as well. Now I know there's the whole, the sharing of resources and making sure that's equal. I understand that part of segregation, but when black people ran their own thing, right, in under segregation, and they kind of had their own communities, and they were still very much religious, and were all about trying to have a good community. A lot of these things, a lot of the problems we see now didn't really even exist, to be honest with you, which is kind of crazy to think about.
I think at that time they also had the highest single motherhood rate than whites. Uh, they
Yeah,
committed
exactly.
they
Yeah.
committed crime they committed crime disproportionately to whites, but not at the level you saw in the 80s and 90s. And the achievement gap was not small, but the achievement gap was wider. That's the only one I don't agree with. Like the study showed at that time, the achievement gap was much wider.
In
They
the
went to
'70s, I don't know. I think the
no, 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 not the 70s, under like Jim Crow segregation.
yeah,
What I would
'60s.
say,
Yeah, sorry, '60s. Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant to say.
yeah, what I would say is that the gap between black and white Americans with every like passing discriminatory law just kept getting wider. Look at something like the GI Bill, for example, which was a bill that tried to help returning veterans from World War II get started, get back on their feet. I mean, black Americans were entirely excluded from that. This is where most of the suburban 1950s culture in America came from. That GI Bill, black Americans were largely excluded from it. That's where like the gap between blacks and whites started to like become like an order of magnitude larger. So those kind of things would obviously contribute to that kind of culture I'm talking about. You
So
understand? When I'm saying that,
I
when I'm
understand.
saying that,
I
sincerely,
totally understand what you're
yeah,
saying. So my one of the things I say to that is now that we live in a time where essentially since like maybe the '80s and '90s, the society is almost completely flipped in terms of trying to get black people, more higher rates of job placements, scholarship opportunities, academic entrance and acceptance. More funding. They get to have like their own NGOs, they're in their own charities and nonprofits, etc. Like Bank of America's donating $1 billion to black communities, that kind of thing. Like, what at like my reason why I bring that up is that things haven't really gotten better with all of this social support and influx of resources, and things don't seem to be getting better at all almost.
how are things not getting better?
I mean, you got the crime rate is still through the roof. Again, the
But it
achievement
has
gap,
reduced.
huh?
The crime rate has reduced.
The violent crime hasn't really reduced. Maybe other
That's
crime in total.
no, I mean homicide increased 2 years ago, like during
Right.
COVID and BLM. But violent crime, I don't think it has increased. The black crime rate has been falling for years.
I have to go check on that. I don't.
Well, I
Yeah,
have a study.
it's maybe been falling a little bit, but I mean, we're talking about
No,
falling
no,
as
no.
compared to like
It's as
highs
close
in the
by.
'90s.
Yeah, compared to the 90s, yeah, it has fallen.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I
Like
agree. Yeah, it
you're
has fallen.
using like a watermark to say it's still high as hell. Like black people still commit over 50% of our murders. I mean, that still is a crazy. That's still a crazy percentage, right? For
Number. Okay, but why do you think that is?
so one of the things so one of the things I want to talk about, like, do you believe in like the like warrior gene or the certain alleles and things that people talk about in terms of like I'm sorry, your link right here.
I'm talking about the
Like behavioral
MAOE.
differences and stuff.
I'm talking about the MAOA gene that is
Yeah.
supposed to be the warrior gene, or the MAOE
Yeah, that's
allele.
yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about it, but like the thing is largely bunk. The people who have the highest number of it, I think they have it in the most amounts are Asians, and people who have in the lowest amounts are Hispanics. And there's just no evidence that this gene leads to. I think there was one study that tried to link it with crime, and ever since then, people have been trying to use this warrior gene thing as a kind of way to explain black crime, but not forgetting that there were no whites which were compared to blacks in that MAOA gene study. It was just black people with no control group. So there's that just can't explain the differences in crime. I think the differences in crime are best explained by yes. I know this is a meme, but socioeconomic factors. Yeah,
I'm trying to go through your paper here. What's the main point? I'm not going to read through all this right now. What's the main point I'm supposed to take away?
Yeah, the main point is that the disparity in with black crime has fallen
Now, the
massively
disparity or
since
the overall rates of crime.
the overall rates of crime have fallen.
Okay, that's fair.
I think stuff it has to do with maybe the engine reduction of stuff like crack sentencing, and even the rate of poverty for blacks has fallen massively as well. I can even link it that. I mean, to say that things haven't improved, it is wrong. And
Oh, I mean,
Hispanics too, like
it all depends on improved compared to what I guess. Like I still think
I mean,
America's still pretty high up there in terms of violent crime rates.
compared to other first world nations, yeah, I would
Yeah,
agree. It's quite high compared to Europe, at
right.
least. Maybe not compared to yeah.
And that's, I mean, and again, I'm not trying to be rude, but if you took just the white violent crime rate, it's essentially on par with Europe. It's like it's slightly higher, like by the smallest of margins.
Yeah, yeah, it is. No. That's for murder. That's for murder, not the violent crime rate. America, even with the white population, commits more crime than Europe.
Right,
Even
but
just the white
it's
violent crime.
it's
It's
not
just
by
the homicide rates that are equal with Europe, not
so,
violent crime in total.
I guess I have to look that up because I definitely know with like homicide and murder, it's almost the
Yeah,
same.
it's the same as Europe. Yeah, there were no violent crime in total.
I guess I'd have
But
to go through other violent crime stats by race and look at it.
the question I'm asking you is, why do you think that is? Why do you think these people commit this much crime? Like, I don't think it's genetics. You don't think that all those stuff like segregation has had and redlining has had an effect on why these people commit more crime than
No,
other groups?
no, I don't because like when it comes to something like redlining, right? Uh,
Mhm.
they like people still live around other people like them, right? Like that's why white flight's been a thing. Like as much as you want to point to redlining, white flight's been a thing as well, which is just code word for wanting to put your kids in better schools or living in a better community. It's like
Yeah,
redlining,
capital flights.
huh?
Yeah, capital flights. Yeah, white
Yeah.
flights. Yeah.
So I mean, so like white flight's a thing too on our end, but no one ever really brings it up about why we've done that, you know. And so I don't you can make all the laws in the world if you wanted to try and force people to live together. They're eventually gonna pick their own people and their own kind to live with. Like if you look at one of my greatest examples, like if you look at churches in America, they're amongst some of the most segregated places in the world, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
black people just want to go to church with black people, and white people want to go to church with white people, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. So, you know, in terms of like, people then look to redlining, and they tie it to like school funding and stuff. Like, technically now, black kids get more school funding per head than white kids. You know, so
Yeah, they don't.
yeah, per head they do.
But let me show you a study.
Again, this is kind of the stuff I wanted to know beforehand so I could have stuff ready. But I'm pretty sure that black kids now are getting more funding per head in school.
But let me show you something. I highly doubt that's true because schools in America are funded by property taxes. So,
Not
I mean, if someone
entirely.
is
There's a lot of subsidies now.
there's a lot of subsidies. Yeah, look at this. Yeah, even majority white schools get 23 billion
Right, but
dollars
that's
more
not
funding than non-white schools.
like necessarily per head though. You understand? I think
No,
I've
I know
seen
like
what
this
you're
thing
about
controls
to.
for
I think I've
per
seen what you're
person.
about to send me.
It controls for per person. Yeah, controls per person. So there's no way. I highly doubt black kids are getting more funding per head. That's considering where they live. Like all these, I highly doubt it. Yeah, per head they get. Per head they get quite a bit less. So
Yeah, I mean, I can go over this stuff later, I guess, in another video. And then
yeah, no
also,
problem, no problem. Yeah,
also,
they get
yeah, you can dive into it for a while. Yeah. But I see largely here what you sent me.
yeah,
Um, but like
yeah, no,
also,
yeah.
so how do you? So that being said, right, and like we haven't had like Jim Crow in like 50 years now, or maybe even longer, 70 years. So then, what would
No,
you
that was
say to
60.
like Jewish people and white people and Hispanic people who largely came here? A lot of them poor, came here and essentially have fit in to, or at least have done better on average compared to black people. You still think that's an effect of Jim Crow?
Yeah, I mean, these groups are not subject to Jim Crow. That's what I'm saying. They were not like excised.
You cut out again. You there? You there?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know the
Okay.
phone.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm saying that these groups were not like they were not subject to Jim Crow, like Hispanics, Asians. So I mean, it's not even a fair or Jews. It's not even a fair comparison.
Right, but like if you were to look at like Asian communities who came here essentially were just wage slaves and didn't have any of the rights that white people did either, like back in the early
Of course,
1900s. You know, they've
of course, yeah.
huh?
Yeah, yeah, I know that. I know that. Yeah.
So like I mean, I guess one of my issues too is you look around and it's like every not necessarily that everyone's getting along, but it seems like everyone is doing so much better, and it's like with the black community we still hear, well, like it's because of this or that or this or that and this and that, and I guess
Yeah, but you understand the difference. No, but you understand the difference between like blacks and majority of Asians in America today. They don't descend from these wage slaves, like these Chinese wage slaves. You have to remember that there was also a Chinese Exclusion Act that kept a lot of Asians from migrating into America until those racist laws like Jim Crow were ended. So, like majority of these people who came after those laws that disproportionately affected blacks. So again, this is not. I mean, it's not a one to one. There's the only group in America that I can say has probably faced that can be equally compared is maybe Red Indians. Like none of these other groups have. Like you have to look at it fairly. For me, like sometimes like it can seem like that people are making excuses for Black Americans, but in my own opinion, you have to be fair and say no other group has had to face this kind of discrimination. So to compare them to Jews who were never like banned from in America, at least, were not banned from participating in wider society or subject to those kind of like massive discrimination. I mean, it's a complete like it's a false equivalency massively.
okay, that's all fair.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's been about an hour. If you don't mind, I actually would like if you could send me the rest of your stuff or the stuff that you have. I'd actually like to go over it, and then maybe we do this again. If you're up for it.
But what did you say?
I was saying if
What
you
you said? I
would,
didn't hear what you said.
yeah, if you wouldn't mind, send me the rest of your stuff. Like I think this is kind of why, like when I was emailing you, I kind of wanted to know where you come from so I could be a little more prepared. I think you've done a good job. You've done a great job of laying it out. But if you wouldn't
Man.
if you wouldn't mind sending me like your studies, I'd actually would like to go through them, and then
Yeah,
maybe we talk again.
yeah, no problem, man. Let me even send you this stuff on the transracial adoption study. Let me send this stuff on the study on the addressing this. Let me get it quickly. Yeah, so that's the stuff on the transracial. You can go through it. It's just addressing the transracial, like a lot of the transracial studies on the the way they've been twisted.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got everything you've got. Have bookmarked and saved.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, I mean, yeah, this is a good intro for me. I guess I have one last thing. Like on this paper I sent you about, it's from the Stanford about academic achievement and socioeconomic status by race and ethnicity, where they have like the
Yeah,
data points plotted out. What was your reply
yeah.
for that one again?
Yeah, my reply was that like usually when they say this stuff, they only use income. But what this study does is it controls for like SCS perfectly well, and the gap still remains with Black Americans. And this is for educational achievement. And my response to that was simply that I would even send you the study that they study less than other groups. They do less homework at every socioeconomic level.
Okay.
So this kind of results is just surprising.
Do you have
Yeah,
anything on that
but
on
I'll send
the
you.
on the studying less?
Yeah. I'll send you that now.
And then also, what do you think about like IQ levels and like short term or impulsive behavior, or having a low and high time preference?
Uh, impulsive behavior.
Well, like like they
There's
always say, like
like,
the perfect
yeah, I
criminal.
understand what you're saying,
Yeah,
but there's just no evidence that they've done a study on black kids in America. Again, a lot of this stuff is cultural, and I think they put marshmallows in front of them. They can't hear me.
yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, they put marshmallows in front of the black kids, white kids, and Asian kids in America, and the black kids were the first to eat the marshmallows. Like they displayed the least self control
Yeah,
out of any of the
I'd
group.
actually forgot about that study. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, but what a lot of people tend to forget was this study was also replicated with Africans in Cameroon, and the opposite happens. They compare them to groups in Germany, and the African kids outweighted all the other races. So again, all this stuff is, in my opinion, is cultural. It's the way you raise your kids. Uh,
Yeah, of course, that's a
like
huge part of it.
these African kids were farmers. Obviously, farmers are going to have, I think, a higher time preference. Yeah, you have to have a high time preference to be a farmer. You have to have self control, discipline to wake up in the morning and do that stuff. So I think a lot of this stuff is just cultural differences. So let me send that study on the Cameroonian kids. And what other one did you say? It's
The one.
English.
Say it again.
Let me send you the stuff on the Cameroonian kids
Okay.
having more self control. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And then do you have one
Let
on
me get
this
the homework.
on the study? Yeah, the homework one. Yeah, I'd actually, that one was the most interesting to me.
Okay.
What are you doing for New Year's?
So I'm just going to probably be drinking with my friends.
Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
What else am I going to do?
Yeah, it's true. I'm about to go to the gym, and then we'll see what I get into tonight.
That's one of my goals for the new year. I was going to the gym consistently for the first half, but I don't even know what happened. But I'm going
Yeah,
to start again like tomorrow.
I used to be really big into working out. Like I probably weigh about 200 right now. I at one point I weighed like 230, 235. I
Ooh,
I used to be really into it,
yeah,
and then I kind of stopped during
yeah,
COVID.
you crushed me, man. You crushed my mind.
Yeah, I played
That's
rugby
how
for
we,
5 years. I don't know how big rugby is in Nigeria, but I played that for five
yeah,
years.
now we mainly play football, but
Soccer, yeah.
yeah, I'm, come on, don't do that.
I'm not a big soccer guy, obviously living in America, so
Yeah, yeah. But I don't know why you guys say soccer. I mean, it sends the world into convulsion when Americans say
it's
soccer.
yeah,
It sends me.
it's like the metric system.
Yeah, exactly. Even when we're saying like 200 pounds now, when we're saying 230, I had to do math in my brain, divided by 2.2. It's not easy talking to you guys.
Yeah, I definitely feel you on that one. I don't know, man. We just have to do our own thing. I can't explain it. Those decisions were made before
Yes.
my time.
It's true. It's true. It's true.
All right, man. Well,
That's what makes the country good.
yeah,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed
That was a nice
this
discussion.
talk. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
I really appreciate you coming on.
No
Not
problem.
a lot of people do that, so I do thank you and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. No problem. Yeah, could you send me the record? Like I forgot to record. Could you send it to me so I can post it on my own channel as well?
Yeah. So if I just upload it to my YouTube channel, can you just pull it off of that? Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem. When I go to upload it.
Okay. I'm probably gonna render it here. I'll probably post it either tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah, okay, no problem, man. Well, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you too, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, maybe we can do this another time. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
All right. Bye.
thanks. Bye, man.